They say perfection is unattainable, but I'd argue my inflatable 12-foot saxophone-playing Santa next to the blinking pink flamingo display is pretty close. Or it was, until the email hit. It was December 1st, 7:00 p.m. The air was a crisp, perfect 40 degrees, ideal weather for standing on a slightly wobbly ladder, tethering the final inflatable unicorn to my prize-winning blue spruce. I was exhausted, exhilarated, and covered in enough glitter to rival a B-list pop star. My annual holiday masterpiece, lovingly dubbed the retinal assault on taste, was complete. My house, 478 Oak Knoll Lane, was no longer a standard beige suburban box. It was a festival. A neon, plastic, 18,000 LED bulb festival. Listen, I know what you're thinking. Leo, is that really Tacky? No, my friend. Tacky is a starter home with 3 sad strands of white lights draped across a single bush. This was maximalism. This was a dedicated, years-long commitment to making Christmas the visual equivalent of a rock concert where Santa Claus plays lead guitar and the reindeer are wearing sequined vests. Let me break down the commitment. The inflatables. 12 of them. Including a 3-dog sled team, a massive gingerbread man fighting a slightly smaller gingerbread woman, and yes, the aforementioned saxophone-playing Santa. His hips actually swayed. It cost $40 a month just to keep the compressors running. Worth it. The color palette. Every color that exists, and several that shouldn't. White lights are the enemy. They represent surrender. My primary colors were neon green, electric purple, blinding magenta, and a shade of orange that only appears when you stare at the sun for too long. The commitment. I started hanging lights the day after Halloween. 3 full weekends of painstaking, electrocution-defying work. This wasn't a hobby. It was performance art. I stepped back, admired the pulsing, glorious chaos, and felt a profound sense of seasonal satisfaction. Then my phone buzzed. I sighed. I already knew. The Highland Oaks Homeowners Association, the corporate overlords of mediocrity and beige paint, had struck. Specifically, Ms. Carol Farrow. Carol, the HOA president, lived 3 doors down. Her house was the equivalent of a dentist's waiting room, tasteful, quiet, and vaguely depressing. She used only warm, tasteful white lights, tastefully draped. She didn't celebrate Christmas. She curated it. The email was titled, Final Notice of Violation. Exterior Holiday Decor. I opened it and instantly started reading excerpts out loud to the unicorn. Dear Mr. Valdez, despite numerous verbal warnings and the clearly defined terms in the Highland Oaks covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CC&Rs, regarding exterior aesthetics, your current display is in severe violation. Okay, severe violation. They talk about my house like it's a biological hazard. I scrolled down to the citations. Section 4.b, subsection G. Prohibits excessive luminosity, defined as any exterior lighting visible from the International Space Station or capable of causing immediate pupil dilation beyond 75%. Oh, come on. I checked that with a handheld meter. It was 74%. That's just good, aggressive lighting. The letter continued, growing more specific and therefore more absurd. Specifically called out are the following non-conforming items: the plastic reindeer wearing Ray-Ban-style sunglasses, the use of non-terrestrial figures, unicorn, and the 12-foot inflatable Santa engaged in a non-traditional secular activity, saxophone performance, which is deemed aesthetically disruptive and a maintenance of property values risk. I snorted. A risk to property values? Carol, my lights increase the fun factor by 900%. People drive here just to see the flamingo display. That's called a regional attraction, not a risk. The ban was formal, aggressive, and delivered with the cold fury of 1,000 corporate lawyers. The HOA demanded the immediate removal of all non-conforming decor within 48 hours. This wasn't just about Christmas. This was about freedom. This was about the right to celebrate the holidays in the most electrically dangerous, visually challenging way possible. I wasn't going to roll over. I yanked my gloves off, grabbed my keys, and decided I needed to escalate immediately. I didn't call. That would be too civilized. I drove my beat-up Ford Ranger 3 houses down and parked right in front of Carol Farrow's pristine, perfectly symmetrical, and utterly soulless house. I marched up to her perfectly painted navy blue front door and rang the bell. I could see her through the window, sitting at her dining room table reviewing a spreadsheet that I assume detailed the various depths of yard mulch in the neighborhood. She opened the door, a woman carved entirely from cold efficiency, wearing a sensible cable-knit sweater and a look of profound disappointment, the kind usually reserved for a dog that chewed up a tax return. "Mr. Valdez," she said, her voice like cracking ice. "I assume you received my notice." "I did, Carol, and I'm here to clarify. What part of saxophone playing is non-traditional, exactly? Have you ever heard a better rendition of Jingle Bell Rock than the one coming from that inflatable speaker?" This is not a debate club, Leo. The bylaw is clear. Section 4.b, subsection G. Your display is in violation of the aesthetic continuity policy. Aesthetic continuity? Carol, we live in a subdivision built by the cheapest contractor they could find in 2003. Our houses are literally interchangeable. The only continuity we have is the collective misery of living under your arbitrary rules. She adjusted her glasses, the movement a slow, deliberate act of superiority. The board voted unanimously. The risk assessment report showed a measurable dip in curb. Appeal metrics. You have 48 hours, or the fine schedule will be activated. That pink flamingo is coming down, Mr. Valdez. The pink flamingo. That was my original piece. My heart. I leaned in close, my breath fogging up her impeccable vision. You want to talk about risk assessment, Carol? You want to talk about consequences? Fine. You want to ban lights? You think this is the end of the line? You are severely underestimating my commitment to holiday spite. She gave me a tight, professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. I look forward to your full compliance, Leo. I didn't say goodbye. I just stared at her perfect, tasteful wreath for an uncomfortably long time, then pivoted sharply and walked back to my truck. I slammed the door, the noise echoing through the sterile quiet of Highland Oaks. I sat there for a minute, the engine running, staring at my glorious, now doomed display back down the street. You want to play word games, Carol? I muttered to myself, adjusting my rearview mirror. You want to stick to the letter of the law? Fine. The lights are coming down, technically, but they're getting upgraded. This was no longer just about Christmas lights. This was a war of legal semantics, and I was about to enroll in the law school of spite. The game was on. The first casualty of war is always sanity. Mine started dissolving immediately after that little chat with Carol. My 48-hour compliance clock was ticking, and I knew I couldn't beat the HOA on aesthetic grounds. The fight had to move into the one place they thought they were invincible: the paperwork jungle. My plan was simple: find the loophole. I spent the next 24 hours hunched over my laptop, fueled by lukewarm coffee and the sheer, unadulterated fury that only a suburban tyrant can inspire. The Highland Oaks CCNRs. That thing was a nightmare. 300 pages of font 10 legalese, filled with terms like perpetuity, de minimis, and the application of uniformly consistent facade parameters. I swear, they hired a poet who only wrote in corporate jargon. I highlighted every single section that mentioned lighting, decor, or exterior fixtures. The core of the problem lay in exterior fixtures, defined as any item affixed to the property, including wiring, permanent decorations, and signs. Temporary holiday decor, defined as removable items utilizing stringed light technology and/or inflatable materials. Bingo. They had specifically, narrowly defined the enemy. I called my friend Marcus. Marcus is an intellectual property lawyer, which meant he was overpaid, perpetually tired, and loved arguing about the definition of words. "Marcus, please, I need 10 minutes," I pleaded into the phone. "The HOA is banning my saxophone Santa." I heard him sigh, followed by the clack of a keyboard. "Is this about the pink flamingo again? Leo, you signed the papers. You know what you're getting into." "No, this is about the wording. Listen, temporary holiday decor, removable items utilizing stringed light technology and/or inflatable materials." What if it's not stringed light technology, Marcus? What if it's concentrated beams of light? What if it's, say, laser projection? Marcus groaned. "Are you serious? You want to bring a laser into an HOA fight? That's like bringing a tank to a pillow fight." "But is it illegal under the CCNRs?" I pressed. He paused. A very long, expensive pause. "Technically, no. The CCNRs are written to stop people from hanging cheap, permanent-looking stuff or putting up blow-up dolls. A non-permanent, non-affixed, projected light source is likely not covered under stringed light technology or inflatable materials. It's a loophole. A stupid, petty, beautiful loophole. But Leo, you'll be fighting an army of lawyers. They'll just change the rule." "They have to call a meeting to change the rule, right? And I have 24 hours left on my clock. I need to strike first." Marcus ended the call with a mumbled warning about civil litigation and excessive spite. But I had what I needed. Legal, if dangerous, validation. The CCNRs were written to stop the tacky, but they didn't anticipate the technical. That evening, I removed the last of my traditional decorations, my spirit crushed, but my resolve hardened. I was compliant. For now. The next night, the night of the deadline, I attended the emergency town planning meeting. A truly horrific experience held in the sterile community center basement. It smelled faintly of old gym socks and misplaced ambition. The room was packed with the beige-clad brigade. Carol Farrow was running the show, dressed in a blazer so neutral it actively sapped the light from the room. I sat in the back, arms crossed, waiting for my moment. The agenda was brief: approval of the 2024 landscaping budget and vote to uphold the violation issued to 478 Oak Knoll Lane. The landscaping budget passed unanimously. Of course. Everyone loves pristine, soul-crushing uniformity. Then came my segment. Carol spoke first, her voice dripping with martyred professionalism. "Neighbors, we are here tonight to address a regrettable lapse in community standards. Mr. Valdez's display," she paused for dramatic effect, "was not merely excessive, it violated our core principles of aesthetic harmony. I have received letters from residents citing severe emotional distress and a lack of peace." A plump woman in the front row, Mrs. Henderson, piped up. "It sounded like a circus. I heard the inflatable compressor humming all night." "And the colors, they were offensively bright," shouted Mr. Johnson. "My grandchildren refused to look at the house. They said the colors were fighting." I stood up. I had to wait for the official question and answer period, but I couldn't help myself. "With all due respect, Mrs. Henderson," I began, pitching my voice to be heard over the murmurs. "The sound of my compressor is well within city decibel limits. It's a gentle, mechanical purr, a reminder that the spirit of Christmas is actively being inflated." Carol hammered the gavel. A tiny, ineffective gavel, but still. "Mr. Valdez, please wait your turn. We must vote on upholding the violation." "But Carol, my lights are down," I pointed out, gesturing with wide, innocent hands. I complied. "Why are we voting on a moot point?" "We are voting to ensure that the precedent is set," she snapped, "that such disturbances are permanently discouraged." The debate raged for 20 minutes, but it wasn't a debate. It was a formal lynching of my aesthetic choices. They argued about everything. The reindeer sunglasses, a symbol of secular disrespect. Leo. They were prescribed by a plastic ophthalmologist for snowblindness. The pink flamingos, non-indigenous lawn fauna. Leo. They're festive, migratory, and bring color to an otherwise monochromatic hellscape. The shade of magenta. An actual argument broke out over whether the magenta on my house was holiday-appropriate magenta or disturbingly vibrant magenta. Finally, the vote was called. Every single hand went up to uphold the ban. Every single one. Except mine. The room confirmed the definitive ruling. My spirit was too large for Highland oaks. As the meeting adjourned, Carol intercepted me by the door, a look of triumph so pure it was almost alarming. "I'm sorry, Leo," she said, but her eyes screamed, "I win." "But community standards must be maintained. We're working on a new addendum now to clarify the definition of tacky to be more inclusive of your, shall we say, unique style." "That's fine, Carol," I said, giving her a smile that was way too sweet. "You can write all the rules you want about tacky, but you wrote your rules about lights, and I'm not using lights." She blinked. "Excuse me?" "I'm using light, Carol. Pure, unadulterated, photon-based projection. You banned stringed lights and inflatables. You didn't ban physics. You defined the enemy too narrowly." I walked out, leaving her standing there by the sad beige bulletin board, her expression frozen somewhere between confusion and dawning horror. I got back to my computer and immediately started a feverish online search. Laser light show rental companies near me, filtering out anything that mentioned elegant or subtle. I was entering the unconventional warfare phase. My shift in strategy required professionals. Unfortunately, finding a professional who understood the nuanced brilliance of a legal spite-based laser show was harder than finding a unicorn in Carol Farrow's garage. I needed a mercenary, and all I was getting were landscape artists who moonlighted as light hangers. My first call was to a guy whose number I found scrawled on a temporary yard sign that read, "We light up stuff. Call Gary." "Gary? This is Leo Valdez. I have a project for you. It's an unconventional, high-stakes, legally complicated Christmas display." "Oh yeah, man, we do it all. Candy canes, icicles, the works," Gary said, his voice sounding suspiciously like he was 17 and chewing gum. "How many windows you got? We charge by the linear foot." "Linear feet are irrelevant, Gary. I need lasers, not those cheap, shimmering static dots. I need high-intensity, full-spectrum programmable beams. I need to weaponize photons to annoy my HOA president within the defined parameters of her own bylaws. A pause. A loud smack of gum. We got those net lights? The ones you throw over a bush? They save a ton of time. Gary, I'm talking about judicial illumination. I'm talking about a light show so overwhelming it induces temporary yet legal sensory overload. I need Class 3 or Class 4 projection systems. We also got wreaths, man. 10% off the premium cedar if you book today. I'm hanging up, Gary. You have no vision. Failure No. 1. The yard sign guy. Gary thought I wanted a wreath. I wanted a declaration of war. Next, I found a company called Aura Pro, Elegant Projection Solutions. The website was all soft focus photos of snow falling silently onto manor houses. They were clearly the enemy, but they had the right equipment. I booked a consultation with Brenda, the company owner. Brenda arrived in an impeccably clean SUV, carrying a leather binder. She was everything Gary wasn't. Professional, refined, and entirely devoid of chaos. Mr. Valdez, she started, laying out her binder on my kitchen table, pointedly ignoring the faint glitter residue left over from my reindeer. We specialize in tasteful holiday transformation. We can project silent, moving images, perhaps a tasteful rendering of the nativity scene, or a gentle atmospheric aurora. I slid the HOA letter across the table to her. Read the citation, Brenda. They banned stringed light technology and/or inflatable materials. They did not ban atmospheric aurora. You see the window? That's the key. I need the tasteful aurora, yes, but I need it set to, say, a 6-hour loop of Mannheim steamroller projected at a luminosity that makes the snow look beige. Brenda's smile started to slip. I think you misunderstand our service. Our projections are designed to enhance the property's value. We prioritize subtlety. I prioritize spite, Brenda. Look, I'm willing to pay you good money. I need 2 Class 3 lasers, synchronized, projecting a custom pattern. The pattern is important. It needs to be abstract. Maybe a fractal that slowly morphs into an outline of Carol Farrow's face, which then dissolves into a melting snowman. It must run 24/7, legally, until the HOA changes the CC&Rs. She closed her binder with a sharp snap. Mr. Valdez, my company maintains brand integrity. We do not engage in tactical nuisance campaigns or property harassment, even if you deem it judicial illumination. Furthermore, a display of that intensity set to a melting snowman. The liability alone would be $30,000, and that's just for my lawyers to consider the job. $30,000 for an elegant light fight? I'm not that petty, Brenda, I exclaimed. Though, to be fair, I was that petty. I just wasn't that rich. Failure number 2, the projection specialist. She had the gear, but lacked the required seasonal malice. I was running out of time and patience. The HOA deadline was hitting at midnight, and my lawn was naked, an embarrassment to my reputation as the neighborhood's festive firebrand. Frustrated, I drove to the nearest big box store. I marched straight to the electronics section and bought the most powerful single-beam green laser pointer I could find, the kind specifically marketed for pointing out stars to astronomy hobbyists, or more realistically, annoying neighborhood cats. My thinking was simple. Small, targeted escalation. A little taste of the future. At 11:30 p.m., I set the tiny, ridiculously powerful green laser on my kitchen counter. I aimed it perfectly through the front window, past the bare bushes, and directly at the very top of Ms. Carol Farrow's prize-winning blue spruce. The tree she boasted was genetically engineered for its perfect conical symmetry. The laser beam hit the top of the tree, creating a single, incredibly bright, vibrant green spot. It was small. It was subtle. It was entirely internal to my property, making it not exterior decor. It was just a light beam. A persistent, annoying, inescapable green light beam. I taped the on switch down, unplugged all my former beloved inflatables, and went to bed with a satisfied smirk. The light wasn't tacky. It was technically compliant. I was woken up at 7 o'clock a.m., not by the gentle hum of my beloved compressor, but by a loud, insistent, and official-sounding knock, knock, knock on my front door. I looked out the peephole. Sure enough, the front of my house was bathed in the faint, persistent glow of the green laser dot hitting Carol's perfect spruce. Standing on my porch were two figures. One was a furious Carol Farrow in a silk dressing gown. The other two were men in police uniforms. This was better than I'd hoped. The hook was set. I took a deep breath, adjusted my ridiculously festive flannel pajama pants, and opened the door. The confrontation I'd hoped for was here, delivered by law enforcement. Standing there were Officer Ramirez, a veteran cop who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth, and Officer Miller, a young trainee with a clipboard who looked thoroughly confused. Carol Farrow was hovering 2 feet back, radiating steam like a faulty radiator. "Morning, gentlemen," I said, trying to sound like a man who'd just woken up from a pleasant, entirely legal, laser-powered sleep. Did I miss the donut delivery? Officer Ramirez gave me the 1,000-yard stare of a man whose career had been reduced to mediating disputes over lawn gnome placement. "Mr. Valdez, we received a complaint regarding possible aerial obstruction or public disturbance by laser beam." He gestured vaguely with his chin toward the gentle, persistent green dot flickering on the top of Carol's perfect spruce tree. Carol immediately cut in, her voice high-pitched and frantic. "It's harassment, officer. It's a green beacon of spite. It's been shining on my award-winning Pasea Pungeon since midnight. My property value is plummeting by the second." I looked at Ramirez, then at Miller, then back at Carol. "Carol, you really need to put a robe on. And ma'am, with all due respect, I am not harassing anyone. I am conducting an entirely legal, indoor light experiment." Ramirez sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Mr. Valdez, what exactly are we looking at here?" "Officer, I'm simply studying the optical properties of monochromatic light on Pasea pungens, blue spruce," I explained with the gravity of a Nobel laureate. "It's a passion project. The light source is a Class 3 laser housed inside my living room, pointing through a window. It is not an exterior fixture. It is not stringed light technology." I complied with the HOA's order and removed all non-conforming decor. I simply replaced it with an academically rigorous light study. Officer Miller, the trainee, looked down at his clipboard, flipping pages wildly. "Sir, the complaint states you are using a light beam to cause emotional distress and possibly interfere with low-flying aircraft." "Aircraft?" I laughed, genuinely amused. "I checked the FAA guidelines. This is a 5 milliwatt pointer, officer. It can barely interfere with a housefly. And emotional distress caused by a green dot? That sounds like a failure on the complainant's part to manage their personal aesthetics." Carol stepped forward, shaking her fist at the green light. "He's mocking me. He removed the giant plastic Santa only to replace it with this. It's exactly the same level of tackiness," I corrected her instantly. "Tacky? No, Carol. Tacky is subjective. This is physics. You can ban my taste. You cannot ban the laws of optics. Show me the article in the Highland Oaks CCNRs that bans the projection of a single beam of coherent light originating from an interior source." Ramirez silenced Carol with a weary hand gesture. He turned to me, his expression flat. He knew I was right. He knew the HOA had created a rule so narrow I could drive a laser beam through it. "Mr. Valdez," Ramirez said slowly, "this is extremely petty." "And entirely legal, officer," I countered, feeling a surge of triumph. "I'm compliant. I'm just compliant in the most annoying way possible." Ramirez finally gave up the internal struggle and pulled out his citation pad, but not for me. He wrote a note and handed it to Carol. "Ms. Farrow, as the light source is inside the dwelling and not a violation of city code regarding light pollution or air traffic hazard, this is a civil HOA matter. We cannot enforce this. If you feel it violates your covenants, you may issue a revised violation notice, but that light is technically legal." Ramirez looked me dead in the eye, a clear, unmistakable warning in his voice. "However, Mr. Valdez, if you upgrade from green to anything that looks like the northern lights, or if you point that thing at a bedroom window, we will be back. Do you understand?" "Perfectly, officer," I said, nodding seriously. "I will cease my monochromatic testing immediately, for now." With a heavy sigh, Ramirez and Miller retreated, the sight of them leaving a small, glorious victory. Carol stood on my porch, silent, the shame of having called the police on a single laser dot radiating off her. I reached back inside, unplugged the green laser, and let the house go dark. "See, Carol," I called out cheerfully. "Compliance achieved, 0 lights. Enjoy the silence." The win was small, but profound. The laser was the legal solution. The police had validated the loophole. I now had the confidence to move forward, knowing the fight wouldn't be lost on legality, but on execution. I just needed a professional who could deliver the northern lights, and then some. I needed the genius. My search for the perfect mercenary led me away from the white-collar corporate types and deep into the underworld of event production. I finally found him on a forum for professional stage technicians, under a username that was simply Rex. Rex's company was called Rave to the Grave Lighting Solutions. Their tagline was, "If it can be seen from space, we lit it." This was the kind of energy I needed. I met Neon Rex Vandelay in his workshop, which was less a shop and more a cavernous, dark warehouse filled with towering stacks of flight cases, miles of cable that looked like petrified spaghetti, and the occasional blast of techno music. Rex himself was a man who looked permanently lit by black light. He wore a neon yellow beanie, a faded concert t-shirt, and had a wild-eyed, creative intensity. "You're Leo, the HOA guy," Rex said, extending a hand that was covered in small, colorful burns. "I heard your story. It's beautiful, man. Pure artistic anarchy meets bureaucracy. I love it. Rex, you get it. I've been shut down by aesthetics. The HOA banned stringed lights and inflatables. The police confirmed that an indoor generated light beam is legally compliant. I need you to build me a light show that is technically not decoration, but a projected, non-permanent, non-affixed artistic illumination event. And I need it to be so overwhelming it makes the entire neighborhood feel like they're living inside an arcade game." Rex's eyes, already wide, somehow got wider. He leaned in conspiratorially. "So, you want to weaponize photons against suburbia? I can do that. I call it judicial illumination. We're not lighting up a yard. We're challenging the very definition of light usage within the municipal code." He led me over to a heavy-duty black metal box. "This, my friend, is a Class 4 RGB laser projection system. We're talking 10-watt, full-color, water-cooled chaos. It's usually used for stadium concerts, but we're going to give it a nice vacation in Highland Oaks. I felt a giddy, almost feverish excitement. Class 4? Isn't that dangerous? Only if you stare at the beam directly from 3 feet away for an extended period, which the HOA would probably consider a self-correcting problem. Rex dismissed with a wave of his hand. We'll mount it high, aimed at the house, using a special diffraction grating to spread the beam wide. The key is the atmospheric haze. He pointed to a large, industrial-looking machine. HOAs ban smoke machines, right? Fire hazard. But they don't ban haze. This uses mineral oil vapor. It's odorless, non-toxic, and crucially, legal. It catches the laser beams and makes the light look three-dimensional. It turns your front yard into an actual physical space of light. It's atmosphere, not decor. We settled down for the technical specification. A rapid-fire exchange of dialogue that was easily the most enjoyable conversation I'd had all month. The custom patterns are everything, Rex. Forget the nativity. I need the abstract patterns to look like pure energy. But I also need one specific moment. Carol Farrow's face. Can you get a clean scan of a photo of her and turn it into a wireframe vector? Piece of cake. We'll make her visage out of pure magenta and neon green lines. Then we'll run a 5-second dissolve sequence where the face melts like the villain in an 80s movie, replaced by a giant, winking, polka-dotted Christmas bulb. Is there audio involved? Obscure Christmas polka music. 6 hours of it. Loud, but directed toward my house only. The sound is annoying, not illegal. The light is blinding, not decor. It's perfect. We hammered out the final logistics. The power, a silent, temporary generator truck parked just outside the HOA jurisdiction line, running a heavy cable covertly through the grass. The timing. The installation must be done stealthily overnight. The show must launch exactly 1 minute after the compliance deadline's final 24-hour grace period expires. The legal pretext. Rex insisted we generate a fake invoice for an optical property assessment study for residential lighting impact. Just in case the police asked again. What about the price, Rex? This sounds expensive. Rex grinned, that intense, manic energy shining through. Leo, I usually charge corporate rates for this kind of bespoke spite. But this is beautiful. This is for the soul of the suburbs. Give me $7,000. Covers the rental, the custom programming, the haze machine, and my personal time. Watching Carol Farrow's face when we flick the switch. It was exactly my budget. I didn't hesitate. I shook his hand, the burns on his skin a testament to his dedication to the craft. The winter solstice spectacle, I declared. Judicial illumination, Rex corrected, adjusting his neon beanie. Now send me that picture of Carol. I need to make her look really magenta. The final plan was set. Rex and his team would arrive at 2:00 a.m. on the final compliance deadline. I was giddy. I had gone from a man defeated by string lights to a man commanding a small army of laser professionals, all because of one infuriating HOA letter. The war was about to reach its climax. The night of the final deadline felt like the eve of the Battle of Thermopylae, if the Spartans had been fighting with highly focused light beams instead of spears. At 2:00 a.m., Rex, his silent generator truck, and 2 crew members rolled up. It was a covert operation worthy of a spy movie, except instead of planting listening devices, we were setting up industrial-grade light weapons. They worked with terrifying efficiency, communicating in hushed tones and hand signals. "Generators online, Leo," Rex whispered, zipping up a heavy cable cover that ran discreetly over the curb. "We're running pure sine wave power. No one's circuit breaker is going to complain about this one." They installed the main projector on a reinforced tripod on my front lawn, positioning it to maximize coverage on my house, and more importantly, to ensure a generous spill onto Carol Farrow's impeccable lawn. The haze machine was set discreetly behind a bush. By 4:30 a.m., they were gone. I spent the morning in a state of buzzing, barely contained hysteria. At 10:15 a.m., the last desperate email from Ms. Farrow hit my inbox. Subject: urgent and final warning. Non-compliance imminent. Mr. Valdez, I see no traditional decor has been reinstalled. The 48-hour compliance window ends at sunset tonight. If your property remains barren, a $500 daily fine will be levied, and we will engage a third-party cleanup crew to restore aesthetic continuity. I chuckled, then deleted the email. Barren, she called it. She had no idea. I paced all day. Every time I heard a car, I thought it was Carol or a tow truck coming for my lawn. But I held fast. I knew my legal ground. I had removed the lights. I was compliant. As the sun dipped below the suburban roofline, the tension was unbearable. I poured myself a ginger ale, sat in my living room, and watched the digital clock on my cable box. 4:59 p.m. The neighborhood was quiet. Only the sad, warm white lights of Carol's house glowed in the distance. 5:00 p.m., the deadline. Nothing happened. Carol Farrow would be sitting in her study right now, typing up the first $500 fine notice. 5:01 p.m. I walked to the front window, grabbed the industrial-grade, sound-dampened remote Rex had given me, and pressed the on button. The quiet, almost inaudible, hum of the Class 4 projector started up. A second later, the haze machine began its work, slowly releasing its odorless vapor into the cold evening air. Then, the photons hit. It was not a light show. It was a retina-searing, reality-bending event. Imagine standing in a perfectly silent, perfectly manicured suburb, and then, suddenly, your entire field of vision is consumed by pure, vibrating, hypersaturated color. The lasers, red, green, blue, and a searing white, shot out, not as thin beams, but as thick, pulsing sheets of light, caught perfectly by the haze. My house vanished. It was replaced by a three-dimensional lattice of geometric shapes, pulsing fractals of light that spun and collided, creating the illusion of moving, solid objects. It was a digital fever dream. The entire area under the projection field looked like the inside of a rave being held in a kaleidoscope. The obscenely loud polka music, thankfully, was directed inward and barely audible, but the energy of the light was deafening. The highlight pattern was spectacular. Every 30 seconds, the entire house would be wiped clean of the abstract chaos, replaced by the wireframe vector of Carol Farrow's face. A magenta and neon green horror show, which would then, over 5 agonizingly slow seconds, melt into a puddle of goo before reforming into a gigantic, spinning polka dot Christmas bulb. It was blinding. It was triumphant. It was technically, irrefutably not exterior holiday decor. The reaction was immediate and beautiful. I could see the lights coming on in surrounding houses, and then, slowly, figures emerging onto their porches, shading their eyes. Then came the fury. Ms. Farrow's front door flew open. She marched toward my lawn, her sensible shoes crunching loudly on the frozen grass. She was not in a robe this time. She was in full battle armor, tailored slacks and a tightly buttoned blouse, but her composure was already shattered. "Valdez!" she shrieked, the laser light show washing over her face, turning her expression into a melting magenta mask. "What is this? What, in God's name, are you doing?" I stepped out onto the porch, bathed in the pulsating light, feeling like a god of holiday chaos. "Morning, Carol. Just enjoying a bit of atmospheric illumination. We're testing the diffraction of various spectrums in cold air. It's a scientific inquiry, really." She was sputtering, her voice failing. She pointed a shaking finger at her own house, where the edge of the show was throwing a relentless, pulsing green and red grid across her porch railing. "That is on my property! That is a nuisance! That is an FAA violation!" "A nuisance is subjective, Carol, and I've already checked the FAA. The beams are projected onto my dwelling and are not a flight path hazard. And as for your property, this is merely light spill. Is there an ordinance against light spill? Show me the article that bans the emission of coherent light. Sources onto a neighbor's driveway, Carol. I'll wait." An entourage of equally furious neighbors, the Beige Brigade, arrived and formed a semicircle behind Carol. They were a Greek chorus of whining. "It's making my dog bark. I can't see my walkway. The colors are hurting my eyes." "Then look away, sir," I suggested, entirely reasonably. "Or put on a pair of sunglasses. I recommend the Ray-Ban style, in honor of my retired reindeer." The chaos escalated. Carol pulled out her phone, dialing with a furious thumb. "I'm calling the police. I'm calling the city. You are going to face a lien on this property. You cannot win this, Valdez." "You already lost, Carol," I replied, the laser light show flashing the melting magenta face pattern right over her head. "You banned the physical object. You failed to ban the energy. This is the price of restrictive semantics." And then, right on cue, the familiar sight. A black and white sedan turned the corner, followed by a second. Officer Ramirez and Officer Miller were back. But this time, they had the big gun. A police captain, stiff and formal, walking right up to the front of my lawn. The captain looked at the scene, the pulsing laser chaos, the terrified neighbors, the furiously trembling HOA president, and me, standing calmly in the eye of the photonic storm. "Officer Ramirez advised me to review the relevant city and civil codes on the way here," the captain said, his voice deep and weary. "Ms. Farrow, Mr. Valdez, what exactly is the nature of the violation?" Carol started first, a torrent of accusations. "It's a hazard! It's a traffic stopper! It's making my children cry! It's a Class 4 laser, Captain! It's military grade!" I waited my turn patiently. "Captain, the device is a commercially available, legally purchased Class 4 laser projector, leased through Rave to the Grave Lighting Solutions. It is installed on a non-permanent mount. It is powered by a private generator outside HOA limits. It does not violate noise ordinances. It does not violate FAA regulations. And critically, per the Highland Oaks CCNRs, it is not stringed light technology and/or inflatable materials. I removed those. This is just projected light. Show me the code that bans projected light." The captain looked at the police report, then at my house, which was currently cycling through the full rainbow spectrum at 180 beats per minute. He slowly, painstakingly, opened his city code book. After a long minute, he shut the book with a heavy thud. He turned to Carol Farrow, who was literally vibrating with anticipation. "Ms. Farrow, the light, though excessive, is not in violation of any city ordinance regarding public nuisance, traffic hazard, or light pollution. It is directed at the dwelling and does not violate state or federal laser projection laws. This is a civil dispute over homeowner covenants. And according to your own CCNRs, which Officer Ramirez and I have reviewed, he paused, delivering the final crushing blow. Mr. Valdez is technically compliant. His display is not a decoration as defined in your agreement. It is, regretfully, legal. Carol Farrow gasped. The sound was audible over the low hum of the projector. Her legs seemed to give way. She collapsed dramatically backward, landing with a soft, defeated thump right onto one of her tastefully manicured rhododendron bushes. The captain gave me one final look of profound exhaustion. Turn it down at 11 o'clock p.m., Mr. Valdez. That's the city's quiet hour. And for the love of God, don't aim any more magenta melting snowmen at Ms. Farrow. Understood, Captain, I said, beaming. The police retreated. The neighbors started shuffling back to their beige homes, whispering. The laser show pulsed on, a blinding monument to legal victory. The chapter ended with me standing alone on my porch, laughing hysterically as the entire facade of my house turned into a giant, winking polka-dot Christmas bulb. The laser light war ended not with a bang, but with the quiet, resigned retreat of the local police captain. Carol Farrow was extracted from the rhododendron bush by a very patient Mr. Johnson and disappeared back into her perfectly tasteful house. The aftermath was glorious chaos. The neighborhood, initially hostile, quickly became fascinated. My next-door neighbor, Mrs. Kim, who had initially complained about the pink flamingo, timidly walked over an hour later, holding her smartphone up. "Leo," she whispered, still shielding her eyes from a particularly aggressive red laser pattern. Can I get the Wi-Fi password for the music? It's not Christmas without aggressive polka." My victory wasn't just legal, it was cultural. The laser light show, captured by several neighbors on shaky phones, went immediately viral on local social media. The hashtag #judicial illumination was trending. A local news crew showed up the next morning asking for an interview. I declined, but I watched the segment later that evening, sitting in my now darkened house. I needed a break from the photons. The news anchor, wearing too much foundation, tried to sound serious. An escalating situation in the affluent Highland Oaks suburb, where one resident has taken the concept of holiday decor to the next, possibly illegal level. They then cut to footage of Carol Farrow, still looking shell-shocked, being interviewed against the background of my house, which was currently projecting a slow, undulating wave of magenta and lime green. "It's anarchy! It's a violation of human decency!" Carol sputtered. I cackled from my couch. Anarchy? No, Carol. It's compliance. I started receiving anonymous gifts, a case of high-powered batteries, a 6-pack of craft beer, and a handmade ornament, a tiny felt flamingo in sunglasses. The neighborhood was divided. Team Carol, small, bitter, mostly the front row of the HOA meeting, and Team Laser, the silent majority, secretly delighted that someone had finally pushed back. Rex, Neon Rex Vandelay, showed up 2 days later to collect his equipment. He was glowing. "Best gig all year, man," Rex said, expertly coiling a heavy cable. "The city council is calling me. They want to know what kind of permits I used. I told them I only needed a permit for genius." "You are a genius, Rex. We broke the bureaucracy with physics. We won." "We did. But you know what's coming, right?" "The revised CCNRs?" "Exactly. They're meeting tonight. They're going to ban high-intensity, multi-spectrum, programmable light displays. They're going to close the loophole. You forced them to legislate against a single, spectacular act of spite. And he was right. I checked the HOA community board that evening. The new emergency addendum was posted, revised section 4.b, subsection G, amended. Prohibits excessive luminosity, including stringed light technology, inflatable materials, and/or exterior high-intensity, multi-spectrum, programmable light displays, whether originating from an interior or exterior source. They changed the entire code for me. That was the ultimate victory. I had forced the hand of the bureaucracy. I had one final, quiet gesture to make. I drove to the mall, bought the most boring, tasteful, non-blinking, brass-colored star ornament I could find, and put it in a small box. I included a printed copy of the new CCNRs. I left the box on Carol Farrow's porch. The note read, "Compliant. Merry Christmas, Carol. P.S. They changed the rules just for me. Happy holidays." A week later, Christmas had passed. The laser projector was gone. My lawn was, once again, barren. The neighborhood was quiet, lit only by the newly enforced, utterly boring, acceptable lighting standards, uniform, sad white lights. I sat on my porch, enjoying the silence and the cold air. They thought they won. They thought they had finally defeated the spirit of Leo Valdez. But they were wrong. They only dictated the terms of the next battle. When I started this, I thought the true meaning of Christmas was found in inflatable saxophone Santas and aggressive color schemes. I was wrong. The true meaning of Christmas in suburban America is bureaucracy. It's finding the single, beautiful flaw in a 300-page document and driving a laser beam through it. The lights were tacky, yes, but the laser show was a masterpiece of legal spite. Now they had banned the light. But they hadn't banned the sound, or the smell, or the motion. Rex and I had a final chat before he left. "Next year, Leo," he'd said, loading the last Class 4 projector onto the truck. "They'll be ready for light. What's the next move?" I winked. "They only banned high-intensity light displays. They didn't ban acoustic holiday displays. I'm thinking highly directional, low-frequency sound waves, tuned to make the entire neighborhood's window glass gently vibrate to the tune of Silent Night, followed by a new, powerful aroma generator that releases the scent of, well, let's call it festive barnyard funk." I smiled to myself, looking down the street at Carol Farrow's house, still perfectly lit by her boring, acceptable white lights. The war for holiday aesthetics was over. The war against olfactory and auditory compliance was just beginning. They think they won the war, but they only dictated the terms of the next battle. Next year, Highland Oaks wasn't going to be blinded. It was going to be vibrated. And maybe smell faintly of eggnog and manure. Merry Christmas.